Welcome to the Zelos podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, Diego Martinez is with me. He's from the New York City Football Club Academy, head of sports performance and medical services. Before we get underway, check out my website, rockysnyder.com. Continuing education workshops. There's different courses, there's blogs, podcasts, archives, and so on. And also, check out setantacollege.com for a master's of science in applied sports biomechanics and movement science. There's also applied sport and exercise psychology, performance coaching, and sports injuries and return to performance management. If you go to setantacollege.com, enter RS10, you'll get 10% off tuition today. And check out Perform Better's 3-day functional summits. They're coming up this summer, 3 different locations, Chicago, Providence, and Long Beach, California. And also this summer is the NSCA 2025 National Conference in Kansas City, Missouri, July 16th to the 19th. Check that out. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button. Here we go. Diego, thanks for coming on the Zealous podcast. I'm really very fortunate to have you on here with your dense schedule that you're in. I'm just feeling blessed that you could actually notch out a little time to make it for a conversation here. So first of all, from West Coast to East Coast, welcome to the Zealous podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's definitely great. Looking forward to the conversation with you.
I love how the MLS has really blossomed. I'm going to say just in the last 5 years. I mean, it has been a journey through the 70s. And myself, I'm a San Jose Earthquakes fan through thick and thin, I'll say it. And there's a lot of thin these days. We didn't have the greatest season. In fact, it was probably one of the worst seasons we've ever had. But that's just means we're building coming up on this season here. So with New York FC, before we get totally engrossed in everything you're doing there, I'd love to understand how, like, your background from sports and athletics to where you are now as director of sports performance and medical services for New York FC and the academy.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'll start with a brief introduction. I actually got involved into sports. It was actually a change of career. I right after high school, I didn't have an idea where I was going really. So I went to a local community college, just engaged in any classes that I could. And then I ended up after that joining the military. Spent some time in the military. And then during my time in the service, that's when I started to kind of like dive into the exercise aspect and realize that there was actually degrees out there that you could get to get these jobs and to work in sports. So started to do my research, and when I finished my service, I joined school in the Bronx, actually, when I came back home to New York, and I got my degree in exercise science. I was privileged to have, I guess, a very renowned professor, Professor Schoenfeld, who runs that program.
Brad?
Yeah, Brad Schoenfeld, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good man.
Yeah. So I always say that, I think he definitely, with his experience and everything that he just brings to the industry, it was a blast to be a part of his program and to be in his classes, and the way that he just, wants everything to be done. That made me feel more in love into what I was about to do, and it just kind of like aligned well with my values and everything that kind of like I learned in the military. So it was perfect. It was hard, don't get me wrong. It was tough at times, but just kind of like, I was not like very young. I was like late 20s, right? And you're going back to school, you're going to school with younger people, right? So, and now you kind of like have to start over, right? Because now you have to have an internship. I don't know what's going on. I'm learning these new aspects to science. I mean, I exercise, I run, I had to do pull-ups, I had to do push-ups, I had to swim, right? When I was in the service, but learning the intrinsic aspects of it behind what goes on in your body, on energy systems and all that was very, very captivating to learn, and I just dove right into it. But I got through it. I let my ego down and just said, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm gonna learn, and started to find internships, to learn, sometimes non-paid, just to get in there, right, and be able to
Yeah.
experience hands-on. So one of those internships that I was able to find was actually with NYC FC at that time, and luckily enough, I say LinkedIn is a blessing, right? I reached out to who was at the time, I'm not sure what position he held, but I reached out to the person that was in charge of the medical department at that time, and at that time I realized that the only way in was just to get in any way possible. So they had an internship for athletic training.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I'm a little confused because with Brad and all that strength conditioning being the wheelhouse, and to be applying to something in medical services. Okay, now that makes complete sense. Athletic training. But before you continue, I'm just curious. What branch of the service were you in?
I was in the Navy.
In the Navy, and what was your
Yes.
primary role there in the Navy?
When I first joined, I was in the selection of going to special forces, but I didn't pass the training.
Got it.
So I joined, but I didn't make it, right? So then I was sent out to another job. And that job was essentially to fix boats, like
Got
to
it.
be a mechanic on a boat. So that was very like it was a very
Quite
bad
different.
time, right? So um, that's why I don't want to kind of like to put it out there too much, right? But I don't want to kind of like diminish the job, because that took me to a unit where that unit you need a mechanic, you need a medic, you need a navigation person, and you need a weapons person. And each one of those people need to learn each other's jobs.
Sure.
So in order for you, and this was a small boat unit, had like high speed boats. And before you get on that boat, you needed to get through all those trainings in house. So it took a while for me to learn all the aspects, and you start to move up in ranks and stuff. And um, I was able to go through that, and I had a really good time learning all those aspects, and just got really good experience. Um, but yeah, the experience was very up and down into what I wanted to do. I couldn't achieve it. And then I was into this other experience that I was able to, still make the best out of, but I ended up just leaving and going back to school, right? So.
Well, how cool is that though, from a coaching perspective? Like those are the things that build up your empathy toward athletes that are striving, and sometimes they just don't reach their goals. You can pull that out of your back pocket, I'm sure. I mean, you can look at that experience as something that is actually a strength for you, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I think that everything that I experienced has stayed with me. And I think that was such a shift at that moment to just solidify what I wanted to do. And it just locked me into, okay, this is my pathway, this is what I want to do. And at the beginning, it was very driven into just working in the high end of sports, working with professionals, and this is gonna be my pathway. And you know life has its own way of taking you to where you belong, because I would have never thought that I was gonna end up in youth sports. And I right now at this moment, as I sit
Hmm.
with you, I wouldn't change it for the world. My current pathway is, my mind is with youth, and I will continue to work with youth until I get tired of it, which I don't see that happening, right?
Why is
Um,
that? Why did you find? I mean, it might have surprised you to find your passion there, but nonetheless, you found it. What is it about youth sports that drives you?
Yeah, so let's connect it to going back to that experience that I had when I applied for that medical position, the internship
Please.
position. I was able to join the professional team, and it was a great experience. I was able to work with really, really well-known soccer players at that time, and for me, it was everything at that moment as a soccer fan, and doing what I was doing and learning who I was learning from. I couldn't believe it, right? But I embraced the challenge and the people that I was learning with, and I started to, you know, even though that was not the pathway and I knew it, I still did the part that I needed to do, right? I was not gonna join the medical department, but any opportunity that I had to go and see what the performance coaches were doing in terms of like gathering of data, GPS, gym work, I was, peeking through to see what was happening, right? Um, so I actually spent a whole season, a whole year with that internship, and then I got the opportunity to come back a second year, but it was under the same internship as a support to the medical personnel. So, what was different on this one is that I was able to conduct a little bit more of the bridge between the end stages of rehab from gym to the field. So that was another great learning experience, just because that there's a process between table all the way down to the field, back to the field, right? And to be engaged in that middle part, a lot of people that is not a lot involved in that rehabilitation component doesn't realize the importance or how much work goes into it, right, in the back end. So yeah, I fell in love with that. I was spending a lot of time in the gym. I was spending some time on the field as well, just helping, even passing balls, right? Or, just kind of like learning what we were measuring, what we were trying to get in terms of running and mechanical workload, accelerations, decelerations, to get that person back into training, right? As well as the strength component from the gym. And we also had some pool workouts just to get their VO2, in shape. If they could, if there was kind of like an injury where they couldn't run, right? So yeah, that experience alone took me to a job in China. I was hopeful that at the time the team was gonna open up the academy. Around that time, the academy that I'm currently working at, they were gonna start, right? And they wanted to get all the performance and medical people to start it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously I wanted to go the performance route, but I was not involved in the performance route while I was there. So the consideration for me to join that was obviously not there. So at that moment, I started to think, well, maybe I need to, start to get my master's. I need to kind of like find where's my next step, right? So at that moment, an opportunity came across to go to China. I'm sure you heard of the company Play. At that time, Coach Mac was recruiting people to go to China. I'm not sure if you are familiar
I'm
with
not familiar
that.
with Coach Mac, but I am familiar with Play.
Okay, so yeah, through Play, they got a contract with China, and they were just kind of like getting a bunch of strength and conditioning coaches to go there. I had just recently got my CSCS, so that was kind of like the ticket to be accepted and to go there. So I was able to go there. I spent a few months. I was stationed with the rowing team for the time that I was there. We were in Beijing, inland China, and at that moment, they were high level athletes as well, not as high as the soccer team. Very young, right? And this is where kind of like my journey about youth starts, right? These people needs a lot of help, a lot of support, right? And that's the goal that China had in their minds, right? To start these youngsters to to build that strength, right, and their capacity and the movement competencies to improve so that they could be ready for the Olympics in Tokyo at the time. So it was a lot of work. It was we were well lit by the person that was over there guiding us through everything. And I think we were able to make an impact on a daily basis, just having these people going from mobility sessions to recoveries, strength sessions, conditioning, right, and just supporting them through the daily trainings and preparations for some of the events they have in the summer to for them to be ready for the Olympics. Then after when I came back from China, I was actually called to see if I was interested to join the academy at NYC FC because the person that had taken the job, the performance coach job, was moving to the first team. So then that opened up, and since I have been working as a performance coach, then that made more sense and align a little bit more into what they were looking for.
So were you staying in touch with them the entire time? I'm curious,
Yeah,
or and
yeah,
just checking in with them while you're in China, or did you
yeah.
just get the call kind of out of the blue?
No, the person that there was another intern that I was there with during my time there with the first team. At that time, he was intern too, but he was a little bit more advanced into his educational career. At that time, I think he was going to chiropractic school, and then eventually he had the position that I currently have, which he was the head of performance of the academy.
Got it.
So him holding that position called me to see if I wanted to be the performance coach for the academy. So then I came back and I joined them, and that's how my journey started here. Here we are now. Now I basically kind of like moved up to this positions in the last 4 years, just shaping and changing a lot of the things that I was mentioning in the beginning, going from not only performance medical but also rehab, nutrition, and psychology. So it has expanded tremendously, and we're just continue to look to make it even better.
How many other coaches are you working with? How many stakeholders are involved, or is it primarily you who's wearing all these hats?
No, so right now we have um, two performance coaches and then three athletic trainers. Um,
And so how many athletes?
we have six teams and that's about 100 athletes.
Wow.
So yeah, we're still is not the best for the amount of people that we have, but I think that we do a good job for sure. I think we have evolved tremendously across the country. If you were to go back in the day, I think that you would only get one performance coach for academy, just one single person all
Hmm.
across. And I think right now you're starting to see, two people, three people, or if you have two full-time people, you have part-timers, right, that come and support you at the busiest times. But we have a big emphasis in youth. As you may know, New York City is very well linked with Citigroup in Manchester,
Hmm.
and their biggest concentration is to make sure that we're developing young athletes to make it into the next level. So there's a lot of energy going into that. That's why we have all those different pillars that I mentioned before, because the emphasis is there to make sure that we start in early enough to develop them from an athletic standpoint, mental standpoint, um, injury reduction standpoint. So that's our day in, our day out right now.
So with long-term athletic development that you're working with these young players, how much has changed, let's just say in the last 5 years for LTAD? Have you noticed a tremendous growth with the use of technology, wearable devices, or whatnot? Like, has there been an expansion, or has there been kind of a constriction down into the nitty gritty? Like, what direction is long-term athletic development taking uh, with New York FC?
So I'll start from the older age groups. Older age groups have the closest approach to the professional teams. We have one semi-pro and one pro, second, and they call it MLS Next Pro and MLS Next. And MLS, I'm sorry, MLS and MLS Next Pro. We are MLS Next. That's the academy. So the U18 is our older age group, and the U16 is the one that follows. Those two teams are considered the elite teams of the academy, and they have the closest relationship, or you aim them to have the same testing batteries, right? Trying to get the same, not the same because they're not physically developed yet, but what are the numbers that our first team is having in certain positions from a GPS standpoint or from a force deck standpoint?
Sure.
Where do we need to get these players to make it to that level, right? So essentially, we are aligning all these processes to make sure that we are taking them to achieve that goal, right? So it's right now we use the force decks. We have a tremendous data gather on that front. We also use GPS dashboards, and we also have internal kind of like wellness questionnaires, RPEs to monitor the internal loads as well. And then with the youngest one from 15 down, 15s, we also have the GPS. We also have them use the force decks, but they're kind of like on a weird spot just because that age group is usually between the ages of 13 and 14. So they're going through peak high velocity, right? And
Yeah.
So we're more kind of like managing their workloads more than anything, more than looking for performance. We're trying to make sure that they go through these processes without injuries, right? So we just kind of like take them more to the gym, just movement competencies, right? Make sure that they're taking care of their bodies, making sure they have proper range of motion around their joints, making sure that every single part of their body is resilient, right? So they have individual exercises that they do pre-training, and these are have all been prescribed based on the testing batteries that we do, right? So both 15 and 14s kind of have that similar approach, and also kind of like teaching them to what's next, right? What is the gym etiquette when you're in the gym? What are we doing, right? When you have to also before training sort of have a sense of autonomy to take care of your body, to make sure that all these things that are being put on a board. Yes, I'm here to supervise what you're doing, but you need to sort of start learning and have this autonomy, right? Because there's gonna be times that we want you to do something at home, and I'm not gonna be there, right? So I trust that you are gonna be able to do it because we've been teaching it, and it's a daily aspect, the daily component before training, and I'm sure that it builds up and they're able to sustain and have that continuity.
So the athletes that are having a peak growth spurt, shall we say, that's where you're going to do a lot of mobility, flexibility training, try and keep the muscles kind of going with the same length as the bone, so to speak. Totally get that. There's going to be times for power, and there's going to be also times for like foundational strength or basic strength. When do you program those in regards to their age ranges? Is there a process that you've laid that out? And also with that, how often are you charting their growth? Is it a monthly basis, quarterly, or do you just get the reports from their medical visits to the doctor?
No, we're doing it in-house. We try to
Okay.
do 8 weeks max of looking at their growth. So we have this chart that we use a formula, and that formula kind of like gives us the maturity offset, and we go off that number, right? Of where kind of like use the zero line from -1 to +1, and if they are in that area, that's the player that we pay attention to, and just kind of like deload them from trainings if it's necessary, right? Because the thing to be mindful of when it comes to growth related situations is that some players develop certain discomforts, right? But others don't. So if a player is not experiencing really anything, right, we are mindful and keeping an eye on them, but we don't really take them away from training much unless there's like a certain complaint. What we do is we do take them to the gym. We make sure that they're going to the gym and they're going through proper strength and power exercises, and that we're also um, having the right competencies, like spending the right amount of time to make sure that they're doing what's needed. The guys that are experiencing pains, you have the usuals, the growth related, right, for the most part at the knee or the ankle. Some of them at the hip. The ones that we experience the most happen at the knee. Those are the guys that we try to deload, right? So we don't take them out completely if they're experiencing any high level of pain. We try to keep them in if the pains are manageable. And we just go day by day. Some of them we work them kind of like in what's the capacity that you have for training, right? Some of them they start training, they don't feel anything, and by 50% of training, right, an hour into training, 45 minutes, they start to feel it at a higher degree. Okay, let's go. We'll take you out. We work with you, do your exercises, just recover. Tomorrow's another day. You might be able to go an hour, right? That way you keep them on the field more, and you still kind of like help them kind of like go through that phase of growth and adolescence, if you want to call it like that.
Yeah. Now, how do you reduce the incident rate of burnout? Because yes, they live for football, soccer. They live for the sport. And you put a ball in the room or in a restaurant or on the pitch, it doesn't matter. They're going to go after it because they're just bred that way in some regard. But there comes a point where it becomes mundane or monotony, and how do you break away from that? What kind of games, what kind of alternate training, if there's any, that you do? Ultimate frisbee or anything else? Like how often do you turn things into non-specific football games?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one to do, to move them, because there's other aspects behind just the thought of I wish we could do more of that. I really do. The problem of
What
leaving
prevents
it,
you?
I will start from the top on one of the
Okay.
biggest things. First one is logistics. From a logistical standpoint, a lot of people travel in the tri-state area at least an hour to get their kids to training with us.
Oh, okay. Here I'm assuming that they are living with you pretty much through the academy, but that's not
No,
the case.
it's
These kids are commuting. Whoa.
yes, yes. That's so you see, so we start to kind of like dig into like all these aspects that they affected, right? If we would have them with us leaving, we'll have different situations and different approaches, but we have this constraints that we're trying to go through, and even with those constraints we're still pushing kids up, and some they're a lot of them are debuting, which I imagine that in the future, once we're able to just develop better logistics, and just kind of like have the program in place, how we want it, how we envision it, and we'll just continue to potentially get more, right? It's a working process, and the company is working hard to get it done. So that for starters, right? So if you're gonna bring a kid down for an hour to do something outside of soccer, that's that makes you question the program. So um, to keep a balance, we have a periodization aspect. So we go kind of like by a microcycle, and the week goes by, just coming from a weekend. If you play, most of them play double headers, Saturday, Sunday games. So Monday is usually off, and then Tuesday is kind of like that recovery session coming in. So that's the session that is fun, right? You still play, but it's more, for them to enjoy it, and they're coming in, they're still working towards, the essence of the game, but it's more relaxed, if you want to put it that way, on many components, right? The physical and psychological, right? They don't have to, think too much about it, right? Then midweek, that's where we kind of like ramp it up again, right? That's where maybe if we coming back, I'm giving you the example coming from a double header break, off Monday, Tuesday, we had that session I just mentioned. Then Wednesday, we ramp it up where we try to maybe mimic 90%, something sub maximal of what they will have on the weekend, right? Have them play 99 if we have the numbers, or even a full field, right? And maybe addressing some both tactical and technical components. And then on Thursday, just kind of like a taper session, less intensity, kind of like working on the game plan for the weekend again, right? So it's a very quick turnaround, short week that just you spend so little time with them, and then on top of that, you have to consider that they have meetings with their coaches to watch a video, that we have to take them into the gym as well, right? That they have to do their pre-acts and all the things that I mentioned about just performance and medical specific. So they spend about 3-4 hours with us, right? And on top of their commute. So everything is just crammed in that evening after school for them. So it could be a lot. It could be a lot if
And
you put it in perspective.
schooling takes place at a different location. It's not like they're coming in and they're doing their academics and then training. They actually come in after school hours.
Yeah, they go to their own school, whatever area they go to, and they're coming right after. Yeah.
And what's the furthest commute that you have some of your athletes traveling? An hour and a half?
I'll say, the tri-state area has a lot of traffic, so you could probably spend a good amount of time on traffic for sure. Yeah.
Oh, brother. I was painting a completely different picture in my mind as to the athletes and how they're recruited and where they are. So this adds a completely another component, is specifically like dealing with families. Like, I'm sure being director of sports performance and medical services, you want to have touches on, you want to have contact with all 100 or so athletes. But now we're talking about 1 to 200 parents on top of that, depending if it's a single parent home or both parents home, whatever. Uh, How do you manage that?
A lot of chats.
Yeah.
A lot of chats and a lot of support. Like I was telling you at the beginning, we make it work. We have a lot of committed people, energetic, and I think culturally speaking, I think that's kind of like the essence of the culture of New York, right? People just kind of like um, getting it done, right? With whatever you have, whatever comes at you, you just get it done. So I think that's kind of like what we live in, and don't get me wrong, despite the logistics of it and the schedule, the resources that we have is what saves us to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the players, right? And if I can go farther specific into the support that we have, we also have doctors from our partner hospital that also provides help. If a parent needs support on anything, like we'll send them over there. We have also recently expanded to get nutritional consultations, because we don't have them at meals, and we want to make sure that they're eating right for the outputs that we want them to give out, right? Not only at games, but during the week, right? You still got to train, and you're coming from school, right? Like, what exactly are you putting in your body to make sure that you're coming in here and putting out what is being asked of your coach at this level, right? So that's a huge one, because you can educate the kid for sure, but who buys the groceries? So the
So, do you have
nutrition,
a way of, do you fuel them? I mean, do you have fueling sources when they come to train with
yeah,
you? Because if we're talking 3 or 4 hours, there must be something, right?
yeah. So we have snacks, right? That's kind of like what we have. We have well, bars for them, and gels, and gummies from a partnership that we have, and then we also provide them with protein post training, right? But the end of the day, you have to make sure that the actual meals, like dinner or lunch, are the ones that are fueling them correctly, because the snacks are okay to get you to training and to help you recover, but we gotta talk about what's happening outside of that, right? What's happening at breakfast, what's happening at lunch, what's happening at dinner, right? So I think that having them understand what that is, and not only them but the parents, because like I was saying before, they're the ones that buy the groceries for them. Like, they need to kind of like also understand what's needed. Are they under eating? Are they overeating? Right? Are they eating the right things?
So, do you create some type of educational platform? Do you do a parents' night? Do you
Yeah,
How do you get this information across? Because I mean, historically, nutrition has been kind of in the closet when it comes to sports performance. It's one of those things that, oh, you just pull out this thin piece of paper compared to the tome that your periodized strength conditioning program is going to weigh down the desk. Well, just try to drink water and try to do this and that. But how do you bring in more insight and information to the family model so that, and do you have a check and balance? Do you have some way of assessing the efficacy of this information that you're giving them, to find out how it's really being absorbed or utilized?
right. That one, the last one, is definitely hard. We haven't been able to track, but what we have done, and now we're gonna find more consistency, is education, like a parents' night kind of thing, right? You send an invite for them to come in, and then it's either me or someone else, just kind of like providing very basic, straight to the point ideas, and to so that there it is not overcomplicated, right? Because at the end of the day, you want the information, but you want it to be just okay. This is what you need. This is what your kid needs. Let's try to get it for them. Um, Again, it hasn't been as consistent as it will be now, because as you will know, there's also um, logistical and budget components that come with that, right? And just working around those to get it more consistent now, for sure.
And in regards to the ethnic diversity amongst these athletes, where where is the majority? Like, I'm just thinking of like ethnic cuisine. There's just going to be different types of foods based on the player's household and what they're brought up with. But are is the majority of players Caucasian, Latino, Black? I mean, I'm sure it's very multicultural, but where would you say the larger populations lie in regards to ethnicity?
It's very, very balanced, very diverse,
All
very,
across, huh?
yeah, all across all
Which
teams. You
makes it
see it.
even more challenging for you, because it would be
Right.
one thing if you had, okay, we've got just, I would say, a large number of Caucasian players. We're looking at Western kind of American food. If you've got Latinos, then or the Black community, we're looking at different types of foods. So how do you manage that? I mean, I don't want to kind of harp on the fueling, but I think it's one of the most critical things. But how do you address the ethnic diversity when it comes to offering suggestions for fueling sources?
Sometimes what I've done when I find it challenging to with specific players, because sometimes you kind of like narrow it down, right? You start to see that the trends are with specific players. So it actually is easier, right? Because you can kind of like generalize at first. And then there's this kind of like the ones that make it through the filter, they just fall on your feet and then just pick them up and right. So I that's kind of like what I've noticed. So I approach those kids and I have them do um, a food log, right? Jot down what you're eating for all your meals, and then let's look at it together after a week and see like you know what's going on. And I tell them is like, listen, I'm trying to help you with this, right? So be honest. If you had something that you're not supposed to and you had it, put it down. Don't lie, because I might be able to give you another option for that. But if you don't put it down, then it might be detrimental to you. So just be honest. So I have found a certain level of success. I have found kids that they have a not a bad relationship with food, but they just don't like to eat, right? And you also kind of like have to find like ways for them to make sure that they fuel, or some of them, they go home, it's already too late when they get home from training. It's like, I'm hungry, but I'm also going to bed soon. Like, what am I gonna eat, right? So you find those players that those are the ones that need help, right, with that. And I have been able to provide some good insights to some of them to help them, discover and find what could be best for those moments, right? And for those that don't kind of like don't like to eat, okay, like let's find something, right? Even if it's the simplest thing, let's try to see if we can find you something that's gonna give you the right fuel for you to perform, right? So
Got it. Okay. So that's definitely a challenge. What about we can call them learning opportunities for that matter, because that's really what we can say challenge. They're kind of interactive there and synonymous. But
right, right.
with your role, what do you find as the best learning opportunities / challenges?
I think that it's probably often time more than anything, right? In an operation like ours, I wish that we had more gym time. I wish that we had more time for them to maybe do recovery post training, right? Some sort of
Uh,
like, like things like that I just, you could say minimal, but that they add up, right? And it's like everything else that I mentioned to you before. Like every single thing that we're trying to do with them, it's minimal, right? But it's a block. It's a small block that adds on a daily basis. That block on a daily basis in a week is a whole, right? Now that you take that block into the next week and the next week, and you look at the year and it's like you build this 52 blocks with these players, and they're just more robust, right? Because you started with that small little thing. And so I connected to everything else, right? Even with the nutrition, as we just spoke about, the recovery too, right? Like we use technologies like MedBridge and Bridge Athletic to give them exercises for them to do at home. I'm 100% sure that 75% of them actually get home and do it. The other 25%, might not, right? How do we bridge that gap, right? So that will be the challenge, right? I will say
Sir.
to make sure that everybody's, you know, fully buying in. And I don't blame that 25%, because I feel that there's commitment. They want to be there, and you know, it's kind of like a 50-50 on that. It's like they probably get home and they have to do homework, right? And you know, but we still try to push them. We still try to give them the push. It's like, look, if you go, sometimes I start a stopwatch when I have the time and a conversation with them, and I tell them, all right, we're gonna run through this program. This program is a mobility that, you know, just to get your hips right, to feel good. 5 minutes. So, right, just kind of like showing them
Little
that it's just
chunks.
5 minutes is a
Yeah.
chunk, and then you're gonna feel better, and your body's probably gonna recover better for tomorrow, just because you took those 5 minutes. It's incredible how that could impact the ongoing of your training week, right? So
Certainly.
it's again the small blocks that add up to everything else.
Yeah, man. Well, to say that you got your hands full is an understatement, it seems. And I guess the medical aspect of it,
Yeah.
how does that come into play? I guess this will kind of be one of the last things I'll ask you is like you just spoke quite a bit about performance and nutrition and long-term athletic development, but when it comes to medical services, how does that come into play with your role?
Yeah. So as I mentioned to you before, the person that was the head of performance was friend of mine, and I was able to learn of him a lot. And he actually was the one that started this position, um, and then eventually after he left, he's actually working with the NBA. I I was able to step up into the role, and I have been able to expand it a lot more than what it was, but obviously he kind of like um, say like pave the roads for what it is now. So he's on the other side. His background was strictly medical, and just by being involved with him and learning, and also from my experience with the first team back then, I was able to bring a lot of the protocols in place and understanding and the learnings from the athletic training aspect of it. So um, I understand it. I lift it. And even though I am not an athletic trainer, I connect with them, right? Like I see what they bring to the table. I see what they're able to provide. They have tremendous skill sets, and working with them is so much fun. You know, it's like um, I work very close with them. Well, in fact, we are one department that works together on all levels, and they are able not, you know, just to show up and watch the field. I mean, these people are, you know, doing rehabs. You know, they're you know, making sure the players are ready for training before training. Some of them are even taking the time to do what I just told you about, like doing maybe recoveries after training, right? Helping out at the gym, you know, just keeping an extra set of eyes when we have 20 plus players on the weight room. So a lot of notes, a lot of following up with parents, following up with illnesses, reports to coaches, letting them know if they're available, not available. So they also go through a lot. I have a very good support system. So to your question about communication with parents and everything that goes on, is essentially having that good group of people that works together to make sure that all aspects are covered, from communication to stakeholders, not only like coaches and management teams, but also parents and the players themselves, right? I think like that's for us the one group of people that we always put above everything, and that's kind of like always our motto. It's like we're here for development, and a lot of the athletic trainers and performance coaches are are young in their careers, and I'm sure that as they continue to grow here, they're just gonna grow into like great leaders in the industry. So yeah, really good people.
Well, that's honestly so fabulous that you've got a great group of professionals with you. It's just an orchestration of success, and I really thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you better through this conversation, but also, man, uh, what a great position for you to be in, and not just thrive, but every day is a learning lesson. Every day gains you more experience, so that I can understand wanting to be there and really work on creating a system that works for as many of your athletes and their families as possible. So it's not an easy task, but I get a sense that you're really up for it. If people wanted to follow your pursuits, obviously LinkedIn, like you say, is a magical place. It's where people connect, like you yourself and myself. But where else do you do social media? Can we follow you on the New York FC or your own handle? What's the best way?
Now, right now, I don't have social media. I'm fully devoted to my family. I have two little girls right now, and we just talk about how busy I am with work. So those are my two worlds, my family and my work. And I do have LinkedIn just because I'm able to connect with people just like you, and just kind of like keep tabs on what's happening, right, in the industry, and just be able to just bounce off ideas and just see where people is at. I think this is a great way to keep network, but other social platforms I currently don't have. So yeah, LinkedIn will be the best one.
I don't know how you'd fit it in, and the fact that you have two young girls and you've taken time out again, that just adds gratitude to my heart that you would consider taking some time out from them to share. So, thank you, Diego. This has been great. I look forward to watching your pursuits, and as well as New York FC as well. And good luck with the season as it starts to unfold.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And just like that, we're at the end of another episode. Thank you, Diego and NYCFC. Be sure to check us out at rockysnyder.com, either online or, well, Instagram as well. Check out setantacollege.com. Remember, if you enter RS10, you get 10% off your tuition. Perform Better's 3-day functional summit coming up June, July, and August. We've got Chicago, followed by Long Beach, and then finishing up in Providence, Rhode Island. And then somewhere in between, July 16th and 19th, NSCA's National Conference. Join me there and pick up my book, Return to Center. We'll see you next week.